2026 budget meeting for Salmo and Area G. My name is Yav Maloff. I'm the GM Finance, IT Procurement, as well as the CFO for the regional district. And let Dan and Hans introduce themselves.
I'm Diana Lockwood, the Mayor of Salmo.
And I'm Hans Cunningham, Director of Area G.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a bit of a presentation to go through this evening, so I'll just bring that up. Let's see here, just give me a second. Oops. Okay, so I've got the presentation up and we'll go through it. So the agenda this evening, we'll just briefly talk about regional districts and how they work. And we'll talk a bit about property assessments and how taxation and budget impact. A quick overall outlook at 2026, and then we'll do a service by service discussion, and we'll end with some pie charts showing the estimated taxation by area, depending where you live, between in Salmo or in Area G. So just a preamble, this is a draft document, so it's still in progress. This is the final budget. We're still finalizing our 2025 year end. That could affect the 26 plan. We still have some committee and commission meetings remaining, as well as board level review. These public information sessions, we've got, including this one, 8 remaining. And then, oh, this is not correct. This presentation is actually based on the February 26th draft budget that we published this morning and is available on the website. So budget planning and review process. So it started actually back in September. So some of the services are covered at the board level. We've got, I think, just about 30 committees and commissions that review parks, recreation, different water utilities, resource recovery, and transit. 3 areas have a local service committee. For instance, in Creston, the town of Creston areas A, B, and C have a monthly meeting where they get together and they discuss all the services that are across that area. We have something similar. It's just started in the Slocan Valley, and then Caslo and Area D as well. And then a few other services are done at the director level. So something new this year, just actually came out today, this week. We've got a new public engagement site specific to this budget season, and so there's the web link there, and just a snapshot a bit about the what the website looks like. So this presentation will be available tomorrow on the meeting site for this meeting. So the regional district, it's one of 27 in British Columbia. It's made up of 11 rural electoral areas, A through K, and 9 member municipalities, which Salmo is one of, and provide 186 services, parks and rec services and facilities, rural fire protection, emergency management, resource recovery and waste, building inspection, planning, GIS, bylaw, transit, water utilities. One big difference between a regional district and a municipality is that in a regional district, each municipality stands on its own and is taxed on its own. So it's not a big pool of money that gets distributed. Each service gets its own budget, and then it's funded on its own. And we generally can't, regional district can't take a surplus from one service and use it to fund a deficit in the other. So we've got just under 300 full-time equivalent employees, 280 volunteer firefighters, 63,000 residents spanning 22,000 square kilometers. So the provincial regulations that impact the RDCK, this is a list of a bunch of them. The two main ones are the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. There's other ones to various degrees that impact what we're doing. One of the latest is the Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which is having a fairly large impact on our emergency management services. And I'll talk a bit about that later. So how are annual property taxes for RDCK services calculated? So what happens is the tax requisition amounts to fund each service are determined through this budget process that we're going through. So for service, the budget's done, and the numbers come up. It says, well, we need $1 million to for instance, to run this service. Separate from that, an arm of the BC provincial government, BC Assessment does the property value assessments, which are available at the beginning of January. And then, so we take the total dollars required to run a service, and you divide it by the property value assessment, and you get a tax rate for each service. And again, that's where difference in a municipality will come out with one tax rate for their entire slew of services, but in a regional district, each service basically has its own taxation rate. And the reason being is each service has a different set of participants. So if you have a park over in Preston, you're not taxed for it over here. And that's one of the main reasons why each service has its own taxation, is there's any service can have any mix of participants. And we have some sub-regional services. For instance, resource recovery is, and I'll have a slide on it, is covers waste management from Salmo all the way up to Caslow. So that service has everybody in that area participating. And then you have some really small services where it's just a few households, like some water utilities have 12, maybe 12 properties on it. And that's about how small of a service we can have. And then, so you take that tax rate for each service, multiplied by the assessed value for each property, and you'll get a property tax for each individual property for each service. So if you live in the regional district, your regional district taxes are made up of a sum of a whole bunch of different services. I'll show that in a bit. Before we jump into showing service taxation, this is a graph of the annual assessment change. The blue bars are the change year over year, over the last year, and the orange are the 10-year average change. So this year, Area G leads the pack and has had the highest increase in overall property assessment values, so 7%. And Salmo's near the end with just about a 1% increase. So quite a big range year over year. You'll see from G over all the way to I, there's probably almost a 9% spread with the blue bars. So if you look at the orange bars, which is a 10-year average, you've only got about a 4% spread. So that tells you over long term, your ups and downs might be extreme in 1 year. They tend to average out over a longer term in this area. Okay, I don't expect you to read these numbers, but what this is showing basically is our draft financial plan is basically this package here. And again, it's available on our website, and it's made up of a number of different components. So the start of the book is individual taxation. So on the left-hand side are taxation details by area municipality. And what that shows is for an area municipality, all the services that are taxed for in that area of municipality, and the changes over the last 3 years. So you can see how the taxation changed for each service in that area over the 3 years. And then there's a summary, which shows all the areas, municipalities, and what the, so that's the upper right-hand side, and I'll show that later, how things changed from last year to this year. So you can see a comparison, between all the areas, municipalities. And then the bulk of the budget package is actually a very detailed statement or budget for each one of these services down to the account level, so you can see all the revenues, the taxation, grants, borrowing, and then where all that money is, all those funds are spent. Wages and bank charges, licenses, permits, capital, and things like that. So this is the first section of the budget. This just shows it a little more clearly. These are the taxation details. So we've got Area G up here, and you'll see probably looks like almost over 30 services. The top part of this page, below those subtotals, is services that everybody who lives in Area G or every property owners pays into all those services. So those services are applicable across all of Area G. At the bottom, what does it look like? About 7 or 8 services. Depending where you live, depends whether you pay into those. So if you live in Weimar, you're getting fire protection in Weimar. If you live, closer towards Fruitvale, you might get fire protection from Regional District Kootenay-Bandre. Or if you live near Salmo, you get fire protection from Salmo Fire Hall, and you might not get any fire protection at all. So that's why those are at the bottom. They really vary depending where you live. But it doesn't matter where you live in Area G or where your property is, you're going to pay into one of those top 25 services.
Yeah.
Yes.
The top line, it says 26, 26, 24.
No, 26, 25.
The last one says the 5. I need to pay my glasses.
Yeah. 5 middle.
Yeah, so you got.
Oh, no, okay, yeah, no, 20, the last one says 24, and I said,
Yeah,
you're
26.
my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are your 3 years. So there's lots of detail there. Shows the assessment, the total taxation, the rate per thousand. Again, as you can see, it changes for every single service, and you come up with an average rate. And yeah, so this is what it looks like for Area G. And oddly enough, I think Area G probably has the largest amount of number of services almost in the regional district, so it's really close. But lots of really small ones there too. And if you live in the village of Salmo, your regional district portion of your tax bill, doesn't matter where you live in the village of Salmo, you're going to pay into all of these. These are the almost 20 odd services that are provided to by the regional district to residents of Salmo. So it includes things general bin everybody pays into, but you've got GIS, building inspection, library, museum, and so on. So we'll cover a number of these in more detail later on in the presentation.
And next year, there will be one less service in both of them because we're combining the swimming pool and the rec center. So right now it shows it's 2 services. Next year it will show us 1.
When you say the rec center, you mean the community center?
No, the fitness center.
Oh,
The tennis courts, pickleball, and the swimming pool.
okay.
Right now, the swimming pool is separate from the fitness center.
Right.
So next year, and they show us 2 different services. So it doesn't confuse you that next year it will show us 1 service. We didn't get rid of a service. We're combining it because it's huge on staff to try and figure out those 2 different budgets.
Okay, this is just an example of a rural tax bill. This is from Area F. So one of our staff members shared this with us. So you saw the previous graph, a couple tables ago. It looks like Area G's got about 40 different services. So the top portion where everybody pays into will show up as one line. So it would say here Area G, and that would be your one line. Then it would be here. It would say G Central Kootenay, and then if you had fire service from Weimar, you would have a line that shows Weimar separately than the rest of it. Okay. So here's the taxation summary by area. Now this lists all the areas in the regional district, the municipalities, and this is where you can go and compare and see how things change year over year. So as far as assessments, as we showed in that graph, Area G had by far the largest increase in property values, in assessed property values in the regional district, so over 7%. The average is about 3 for the regional district. And then taxation, average taxation increase in the regional district on the far right is about 5.1%. Area G is above that, about 8.6. Salmo's about 10. So one thing that's driving the increase in Area G, because it had the highest increase in property assessment, it's going to take a greater share of services that are shared across the region. So like general admin is one, resource recovery is another, and then some recreational services. So that's partially what's driving the increase at Area G. Great 2026 overall outlook. So project as shown previously, projected overall average increase of 5.1%. That varies again quite a bit depending where you live. So the $48.2 million in total tax requisition is actually $1.6 million lower than what we had projected for this year last year. So when we did this budget last year, we said 2026 was going to be $49.8 million. We're $1.6 million lower than that. CPI increase, so that's basically consumer price index. It's an inflationary increase on staff salaries and director stipends is 2.5%. We do have a couple of union agreements or collective bargaining collective agreements when they had a 3.4% wage increase this year. Other things that are affecting the budget, decreasing interest rates.
Dead silence. We had no clue when we were going to be heading home. Jonathan is a WestJet Vacations customer and says he's been told their flight out is March 1st. He reminded the WestJet agent about the federal air passenger.
Hello, Donna, can you mute your mic, please? I don't know if I can mute her remotely, probably. Oh, she's muted now. Okay, thank you, Donna. So increasing interest rates are reducing interest charges on short-term loans, but also reducing investment income. And as probably many of you, if not all of you, are aware, new provincial budgets come out. That's going to have an impact on costs, including the addition of PST on some services such as accounting and architectural and engineering services. So PST didn't used to apply to those. It's going to apply from what we understand later on. So the bigger impact will be in the next year. Political climate, again, foreign trade, the uncertainty, including tariffs and counter tariffs, are causing some increase in costs, some supply chain issues. It's become a little more difficult to source items. Things get much worse, if not already. Some slowing economic activity. We didn't see it last year, but potentially lower building permit, waste disposal and recreation fee revenue. And if we enter a more severe economic downturn, it could have a wider effect. So that's not built into the budget. But it's certainly something to keep in mind. Fluctuating Canadian dollar can have an impact as well. And the other thing that's in the news a lot these days is artificial intelligence. It's really evolving quickly. I follow it quite closely. It's amazing how it even changes week to week, at least month to month. So use of the RDCK has increased, although it's fairly limited. And as a reminder to us and everybody, need to be mindful of accuracy and privacy concerns with AI and AI tools. So just some quick graph for the regional district overall. This is across the entire regional district, just to show where taxation on this one, where taxation goes. So the major rec facilities, which are Nelson, Creston, Castlegar, that's almost a third. But if you combine it with other community services, parks and museums and everything, we're probably over 40% basically parks and recreation and community services. Fire and rescue is another 21%. Resource recovery, which is basically waste management, recovery is 14. Transit, and then we get into smaller pieces of the pie. So about at least 75% is covered by 3 general areas. Okay, this is what's called a waterfall graph, and what this shows is the change from 25 to 26 in taxation. So the far right says we have about a $2.7 million increase in taxation across the regional district. So the blue bars are increases in taxation. Red or orange is decrease. So major rec facilities have had the largest increase. Fire, rescue, transit, resource recovery have the largest increases. And then we had actually a couple of services where we had a decrease. So that just shows the change in taxation year over year. And then this next pie chart says, okay, where does the money go? What was it spent on? What's fund spent on? So this excludes capital expenditures like new buildings or buying fire trucks. This is just sort of operating as well as reserve contributions. So wages and benefits about almost 40%. Services, these are contracted services, snow plowing, accounting services. Miscellaneous is small pie. 7% grants. Debt servicing is 8%, and then reserve contributions are 13%. And reserve contributions are basically setting money aside for what we call asset management, and that's to repair, replace, and replace assets as they wear. So overall, $4.2 million increase in non-capital expense year over year. The bulk of it by far is increase in reserve contributions for asset management, and then the wages and benefits are next, and then some smaller items, and then and then on the far right again a decrease in grants. Contracted services, and actually lower debt servicing, which I think is driven by some of the decreased interest costs. Any questions from anyone before we jump into service?
It's interesting though to note that what a large portion of the regional district budget goes for. Yeah, and most of you think maybe went to fire service, something like that, or water. No, it goes for. Yeah.
Recreation.
Parks,
Recreation.
community halls, museums.
Recovery.
Okay.
Biggest budget.
Okay, so we'll go through a few of these services. So general admin is a service everybody pays into. This is basically general administration, includes corporate admin, finance, IT, human resources, municipal directors, and a portion of rural directors. So this is seeing a 22% taxation increase in 26. What's that primarily driven by? The biggest item is there was much less surplus carried forward from 25 into 26 than from 24 into 25. So in a regional district, if there's a surplus at the end of the year in a service, that surplus has to go back into the service. We don't, the funds just don't disappear or go somewhere else. They stay in the service, and in the next year they could be used to reduce taxation. So if you have a lower surplus, you have less ability to reduce taxation. So that's the main impact with S100. And then the other one that's actually hitting us for $130,000 this year is our accounting software provider, Unit 4, which is used by, I think, I would say a majority of local governments in BC. Basically says, we're not going to support your version anymore that you run on your own computers. You have to now transition to something that runs on our computers in Toronto and moving to the cloud, basically. And guess what? We're going to charge you double what we charged you before. And because now we're running it for you, and guess what? We're going to charge you $60,000 to migrate as one-time cost. So basically $130,000 of the taxation increase is attributable to that. So that $60,000 item to migrate is a one-time item. The $70,000 will be an ongoing charge in the future. So housing availability and high expectations, including cost of housing, is still continuing to impede recruitment efforts. When people are when we're recruiting, if somebody's moving from a lower cost area, they look around here and it could impede their ability to take a job here. And then just a couple of IT items here. We're continuing to migrate to Microsoft 365 environment. There's another case where technology providers have basically said, we're not going to let you run your software anymore. We're not going to support you. So 10 years ago, we bought a copy of Microsoft 2016. You install it in your computer, you run it, you don't pay anybody anymore. Microsoft said, you can't do that anymore. We're not going to support it. You have to move to our cloud software. And by the way, we're going to charge you $250,000 a year to do that. And so that started last year. So we went basically from something we paid for once and wasn't costing us much year over year to something that's well over $200,000 a year. Rural administration. So this is the administrative services for all the rural electoral areas. So it's actually seeing a 22% taxation decrease for a couple of reasons. But before I get into that, so this service includes bylaw enforcement. So this includes noise, animal control, unsightly nuisance properties, etc. Bylaws vary by electoral area. We don't have any standard bylaws, we have very limited bylaws for bylaw enforcement across the region. One item that's saving a few dollars is now bylaw and building managers shared between two services. Some of the activities where the bylaw enforcement this year is a review of the noise nuisance and unsightly bylaw in 26, new dock service bylaw for 4 areas. This service includes a portion of rural director stipends. And the big change in this service for 2026 versus 25 is it used to encompass the regional fire overhead. So that's the centralized fire administrative services that support all the fire halls has been moved to a new service, A107. So it's more transparent and clear exactly what that service is costing. So part of this decrease is driven by there was some costs in A107 that were being covered in 101, but they're now moved to 107, so that's caused a decrease here. And as well, there's some interest revenue, retroactive interest revenue that was credited to this service that led to some of this taxation decrease as a one-time thing. So if you look into next year, that 20%, 22% taxation decrease will actually reverse and it'll jump up to the level it should be at. So this is a one-time decrease.
What's included in that service?
Basically rural directors and bylaw.
No, I meant the one that we put to the fire.
Oh, A107?
Yeah.
So A107, which is a sheet on here, is basically the regional fire chiefs, the deputy chiefs, centralized training, their equipment, their administrative support. So that's what's in A107.
Good, thank you.
And then A107 is allocated out to all the individual fire halls.
Yeah.
So on each individual fire hall, there's a line that says, transfer to regional fire A107. So I think that's somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year.
It's the same amount for each fire,
It's the same for each.
regardless how many calls they get.
Regardless how many calls or number of, firefighters or whether they have a full-time chief or not. So GIS service S102, geospatial information systems. So this is all your sort of digital mapping. I don't know if anybody's gone on, we have a public web map. You can go look at the entire regional district, all the properties on it, not who owns it or anything like that, but all the property descriptions. So it looks after that, but a whole bunch of other things as well. Addressing 911 data, landfill services, supporting fire services, emergency management support and evacuation mapping. So on that picture on the right-hand side is basically the evacuation map from a fire near the Argenta area from 2 summers ago. So it's seeing this service is seeing 25% taxation increase in 26. There's some funding for some, again, required upgrades to software systems. So these large software vendors, where largely a captive audience, are hitting us with some fairly large increases. Esri is sort of the standard system for GIS. There's virtually no other options available at sort of this scale we operate at. So one thing that GIS is also supporting is what's known as new generation or NG911. So that's moving to a modern 911 system where it's digital and smartphones are supported. And this service is also part of the increase is there was general admin fees were low last year and they were corrected this year.
Will we see 25% for an increase for the next few years with Nelson pulling out? Do you anticipate it being higher?
Nelson, I think, is roughly about 25% of the service. So we don't know all the details around that and how that's going to look right now. So one of our municipalities, probably the largest ones, decided to run their own GIS service for a bunch of reasons. Partially to support, they have their own electrical utility and to support their own public works environment. So they've been paying into this service, so they won't be after next year. So we are having discussions to see how that's going to impact the service. So right now we don't show a reduction in taxation for the service with Nelson pulling out, which is probably occur sometime next year.
And the reason I do bring that up is because Nelson pays $450,000 into this service.
Not a year.
Well,
That's the total service?
no, that's City of Nelson.
No, that's their assessed value.
Oh, so
They pay. Okay.
yeah, it's 800. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So building inspection service, that's 103. Is actually seeing a taxation decrease this year. Building revenue was stronger than expected in 2025, almost $1 million, or permit revenue, sorry, compared to what we budgeted. So about a $95,000 increase. So some of the projects they have planned is modernizing the building bylaw, continuing to archive digital paper files, moving to a more versatile software for plan checking, and then two vehicles are slated to be replaced from reserves in 2026. Planning and land use responsible for, this should just say Area G, responsible for administration of zoning, land use and development applications, development of long-term community plans, land use zoning bylaws, standards and policies. So seeing a relatively, basically inflationary increase in taxation this year. This service also receives a fair amount of provincial funding to deal with things with housing regulation and sub-regional planning. They're working on a subdivision and updating the subdivision servicing bylaw, as well as a couple other initiatives. Okay, Central Resource Recovery, service is 187. So this includes transfer stations, recycling depots, organic composting, as well as transportation. So a 3% taxation and 6.4 tipping fee increase, a number of capital asset purchases, including a trailer, roll-off truck, and tractor truck. Some work being done on some work at, or planning work to be done on Groman Recycling Depot, reconstruction of Mongrel Head Transfer Station, bin wall, work on legacy landfills. So there's a number, when the regional district came into being, 65 or 66, there was a whole bunch of existing landfills, and by statute or regulation, the regional district was still responsible for those, even though they haven't been used in a long time. So just sort of doing the assessments, making sure there's nothing further required, or if there is anything, then figuring out how to fund it as far as, if anything's not in order there. So piloting some new septic management options, commercial organics phase in, and then some rural organics diversion initiatives beginning this year. Just note the pictures on the right-hand side there. I believe that's the organics facility at Creston. Sorry, Salmo, at the Salmo landfill.
It's a new organics facility in Salmo.
Yeah, Creston as well. That's Salmo. And the bottom right hand is basically what we call a cell, which is full of waste, and we don't just leave it or just cover it with dirt. We have to cover it with a membrane to prevent leachate and as well as gases escaping.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a fairly complex process, an expensive process to run a landfill, more than it used to. So you basically cover it with a membrane, you cover it with various layers of soil, and then you might hydroseed it, and you might have pipe or perforated pipe running through it to capture gas, things like that. And now I believe in some areas, actually, before you start filling it, you have to have a liner to capture leachate. So to operate a landfill, I would say from 30 years ago, the costs are probably exponentially higher than they used to be.
Yeah, we're pretty amazing, isn't
So we'll go over some regional parks and recreational services now. So service 202, which is the regional park service, it's shared with City of Nelson areas E and F. And so 3% taxation increase.
it?
Oh, sorry,
And.
it's shared. Yeah. Yeah, Salmo Area G share this service.
Oh,
Nelson E and F. Yeah. So 11 parks in the service. So the 5 little green boxes below detail the major projects taking place in 2026. So the ones that are probably most pertinent to this area are the work on Rosebud Lake. So working with the dam safety officer on maintenance compliance, and then the Great Northern Trail development of the trail management plan is ongoing too.
Yeah. Yeah, can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
In regards to Rosebud Lake, we got $1.2 million in grants, to cover the purchase of the property. Thanks to staff and. Anyway, the thing is, so that we bought the property at the far end of the lake where the church camp is, plus 200 acres behind that. With that amount of money, mainly with the idea, and the people that contributed did it because of the turtles, right? Because these turtles are special. They're super big and they're largest painted turtles in the area. And, apparently they live off beaches, some people. Because there are lots of beaches in the valley. Anyway, so the idea is to develop it. Also, of course, now that we got it, we also got the dam. Because one of the people, the dam was first of all owned by the church camp, and when it blew out in the 60s, you remember it was a beaver dam, and of course when the beavers were trapped, the dam rotted and whoosh and washed up the highway down below. So the dam people spelled as well as them said, well, we have to check to make sure the dam is perfect and this, because we can't have that happening again. Now the present dam was built by the Corps of Engineers in the middle 60s. At the request of the church camp, and is a proper dam. It has proper foundation, drains, and all the rest of that. However, when we got it, I took some aid funds, to say, okay, to support some $200,000, I think $230,000, to make sure that the dam, the ultimate testing of the dam and the maintenance of it in the future. That, otherwise we would have had to drain it, which was not really good for the turtles. So that's where we are. I just thought I'd give you that kind of.
So,
Yeah, and how much of our budget actually goes to maintain? Yeah,
I don't have that breakup.
okay.
Yeah.
It used to be $5,000. You can't maintain those, but
okay.
we did have some strange things happening, of course, because the high school built numbers. Set it up on the hill on private land. Didn't put a hole underneath it, but it was used anyway. And that land, private land across from is now pot farm.
Right.
And we could have bought it 30, 40, 50 years ago for 300,000, but we didn't have to do that. Nothing for pot farm. But close to the lake part, because of the requirement that you can't pollute the lake, right, means that if you can put a cottage right next to the lake, but you'd have to pump your sewage and everything way up in there. Right. It's kind of difficult. We're watching to make sure that the lake is preserved. And also something that it will be a part of this planning, the community planning. We would like to see that church camp and the 200 acres behind it. We'd like to see happen. Because remember when we bought Rosebud Lake in the 90s, we didn't buy it. When we bought the here and created a park, we had a community group that, that decided what would you like to do with it. And as you may know, Mr. Nelson suggested a first meeting in which he was, said, well, why don't we have a real, let's count how many fish are in the lake. And the other members said, no, we don't think we want to do that. The committee has been dissolved. However, if anybody has any suggestions, if you contact them, I'm sure you'll be available and try to see what you can do.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. So overall, parks for the entire regional district, they're working on regional parks, trails, and water access strategies. So that project started in 2024 and anticipated to complete it in 26. So there'll be a report coming to the board later on this year. And then so recreation. So here's the sort of the two or the three services that are under rec. So 218 is the Salmo Valley Youth and Community Center. So a projected tax increase of $10,000 to support summer camp programs. Service 230. So this is where I think two services are going to be combined. We have Service 230, which is Recreation Commission number 7, Salmo Area G. And so it's showing an increase of 16.1, again, primarily because of decreased prior year surplus. And then there's a swimming pool service, but the swimming pool service basically pays funds into 230 to run the pool. So it's like these two services are actually one. So we're in the process of combining them. So it'll just be one service that looks after the pool and taxes for the pool and everything else.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sort of curious. You don't happen to have the numbers, like that proposed tax increase of $34,000. How much per resident?
I don't.
Okay, well, I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say, well, in Area G, we have about 5,000 people. So you divide the 5 into 34, and it's about 6,000.
This 5 includes Salmo?
No,
We have, it's 70 and what was it? So
anyway, that's just so you know.
Which is a cup of a nice, cost of a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So sometimes we look at those numbers and say, oh, that's terrible. But we realize, localize it, it makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay, some of the initiatives in recreation, so financial access and inclusion. So there's a low cost recreation program. So there's a cheer program. And then there's the rec program seeks out sponsors to offer free events or sponsor free events for the public. And then there's a leisure access program for subsidies on general administration, on general admission. So changes were implemented last year, and across the regional district, there was about 780 patrons that are enrolled. And then there's some numbers there, how much was allocated between adult and youth. One more slide in recreation. So this just shows the number of visits to Salmo Fitness Center surpassed grew by about 300 visits from 24 to 25. So from about 8,700 to about 9,000 visits. And then swim lessons this year had 58 registrants, and drop in pickleball with an L missing at the end had 196 visits.
The swim lessons, if I may, I hate to interrupt. The swim lessons are for private people, like if I want to take swim lessons, but this does not include the schools.
No.
The schools get swim lessons?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a separate program.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that we did talk about at our recreation, so the public knows, is that those numbers could be possibly up because there was not skiing or skating this year. We've seen an uptake in the curling rink because the other two winter activities haven't been available, so we might see a down. Like it balances out. If we get good snow next year and cold weather, we might not see as many at the fitness center at this time. But what we figure is why the uptake, because it has been, and plus we also added an hour for the kids to come in, so it wasn't so much on seniors and that were in there, that they could come in right after school.
What's happening with Erie Creek Provincial Park?
So the provincial park, we have no idea.
No,
It's a provincial park. It's closed by the government of Europe.
yeah, it's decommissioned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mainly because it's flooded.
Yes,
And
because of
for
the,
flooding, and the province had tried to give it to Frankfurt when I was people parks 30 years, about 40 years ago, as a director, that the province wanted to give it to the regional district. And I said, no, thank you. I think it would be nice to have a park that you could actually camp and set. Be a provincial park, but it was conditions, I'm sorry.
well, Erie Creek was crazy.
Yeah, it's got that.
Yep.
And it floods all the time. Yeah.
So that's
That's it.
I'm sure the province would give it to us, yes.
Huh.
But I don't know what we do.
It's just kind of stagnant. Nothing
That's what
is
it is,
happening.
yeah. Neither they want. What do you do with
Tree
it?
stuff. Nothing happens there except after the last windstorm.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't know what you could do with it, really.
Just wondered.
I suppose you said there's a tree farm.
I like it just the way it is.
She's a native.
That's what.
All right, continue.
Okay, we'll go through what we call contribution or grant services. So these are services the regional district doesn't run, or what it does basically contributes funds to other organizations or events in order that they can operate. So S113 is economic development. So it's seeing a bit of a taxation increase. Salmo Area Library Service is seeing a taxation increase as well. So that's S195. Museum, a smaller increase, S192. And the Salmo Wellness Center, which is just Area G, pays into is for its contribution is a 1% taxation increase.
So, I don't remember us saying anything about the economic development increasing that, and it says 12,000, and that's what they got before, so I don't know how 17% increase is there. And the wellness center was just 10,000, I don't know where that 1% was. That was
So the 2026 budget is there's S113 was 10 something last year. And now it's 12.
And the other thing is when it looks like a big increase, like 17%, or
That is-
Yeah, that's different. I don't know why it was.
you know,
So
that's all it
why
was.
wellness center, does it only say Area G? Why doesn't it say Salmo on Area G?
centuries ago, and this was the doctor's office. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. There. So.
Yeah.
We're
Because it wasn't
concerned because when they closed
from last year.
medical center,
There was nothing, I don't
no,
know,
it was about, listen, wellness center, we should be okay.
finding that the last couple.
There was a referendum. You got asked if you would contribute. And, so what happened is, we talked to the province about it. And the Area G said, well, listen, we're not operating. So we will contribute to it every year. Because of these.
There's a
To be able to. The max is
This is
about-
going into-
That's how it came about. And when we went.
basically
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
the granting process.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
were living places. with-
Right.
So now-
Now that they're there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Getting funding for that. Okay.
Okay.
When you talk about the taxation going up a little bit for these things, that's our tax money going up a little bit to support that facility. Okay, thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think where the wellness center, the 1% as admin has gone up, it's the same contribution going to the wellness center. But I think that it's because admin's gone up, and that's 1%. Because it was just a flat and going to reserve.
It says it all.
I know, yeah.
It's really.
It's real. Yeah.
The rest is.
Yeah.
1%.
Yes, this isn't the grant amounts going up, this is taxation increases, but for the library, the bulk of that will be going to the,
Library.
that increase will be going to the library.
Okay.
Okay, water utility, service 224, so 3% user fee increase, they're still working on the partial tax increase for next year, so they'll be between 1% and 3%. There was no capital work done last year or planned for this year. The next capital work is being planned for 2027 for the UV unit
We're
replacement.
setting money aside. The environment's been very lucky because they have not had to pay for this stuff. I mean, they have, but the money funds have come from taxation. Their rates do go up though because the cost. a water utility and treating water and testing it and all the rest of that stuff is expensive. And, but we've been lucky because when we replaced the system back in the 80s, we put in modern pipes and valves. The plastic, there used to be his nickname Blue Brute, okay? Does not rust. And so on. So its life, which was first started when it first came out at about 20 years, is now up to 50 and 100 years, which means that any luck at all. And we also have, because of that, been able to maintain a really good reserve. Yeah, reserve, but no, the other one. We're pretty strong. You mentioned it at the beginning, and then setting money aside. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
So emergency planning, this is a, across most of the regional districts, except the larger municipalities. So this, 158 is specific to G and Salmo, but we've got 7 or 8 emergency planning services across the regional district. What basically happens is service A101 is the cost of capture there, and then spread across these 7 services. So 158 specific to Salmo and G. So this service basically does their emergency management and planning. And so it's the big thing it's working on is the implementation of the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which brings a whole new level of responsibilities, including updating emergency plans, risk assessments, business continuity plans, moving to multi-jurisdictional planning, aligning, updating bylaws, policies, procedures, and templates to do with emergency management, and also covers the neighborhood emergency preparedness program. So when we have wildfires or flooding in the area, then this is the service that supports our organization or the regional district year round to develop the sort of the responses and the plan for this. So when an actual emergency happens, the province will reimburse us for, say, if we've got fire response or evacuation or costs directly related to emergency, but all the costs around planning for it and setting up the structure for it are covered through taxation through these services. As part of EDMA, Indigenous engagement is also part of the project. And then so we're continuing to increase emergency support services, upgrading some of the systems to make them more efficient. And then this service also looks after the Fire Smart programs and grants.
Oh, could I ask a question about the fire smart stuff? Are we going to increase the amount we said to repay people who have had fire smart places?
Not that I've heard.
We possibly look at that. People, we ran out of grant money this year. And
Getting it. Probably shut that program down, you might not get any.
If they are shutting it down, don't say it with too much certainty.
Well, they're pretty much saying they're shut down.
well, which is too bad because it's what programs they have. Because after all, forest fires are getting worse every year. And if you fire smarted your place by building with non-combustible materials and cutting back and doing all the things it does, it's important. And the other thing is, of course, that is happening in the science that is the insurance companies are saying, if you haven't started firefighters in your place, either you'll be paying a tremendous rate or we won't insure you. And if we don't insure you, you won't be able to get a mortgage.
We're wondering, we didn't get paid money from last year. And they said, you won't get paid until August 2026. I did send them a letter and say, yes, we disagree with you, and we think you should be doing this, this, and this. Didn't get an answer back. They were always pleasant to speak with. But the point is, will we actually get that amount of money? Because it's thousands. We have a lot to do on our property. and the highest is 10,000, and you get half of what you're claiming, basically.
Yeah.
So it could be very disappointing. And you really look strongly then at government programs. Are they just talk and supporting their staff, or do they actually get the money out to the people? That was how we felt.
No, I understand, and we spoke, and I certainly agree.
So how it works is that the government gives every area so much, right? So if Salmo got, and I'm just gonna use Salmo Area G, and say we get the same amount. And we had 10 people, 10 families that did it in Salmo, and say 20 families in Weimar, and it only supports 10, then there's 20 houses that won't get supported in, no, I'm sorry, not Weimar, Area G, then there's 20 that, or 10 that won't get supported. So it's only a certain amount of money.
Why send your assessors out? And you know, you've got just this much money,
Because
but
they
you
don't
need this much.
Because they don't know. You send out the assessors and people might not do the work. There's lots of people that have had their places fire assessed and they didn't do the work. Or they do the work and they don't apply for the money back. But they want to know what to do. So,
Or no.
yeah.
Well, I
Anyway, this could be very disappointing.
Yeah,
certainly
I agree.
well, I had my place fired 10 years ago. Fire chief here was the fire. He came out and checked my place over. Gave wrote a letter saying that, and I took pictures. He said, oh, well, he says, you know, you gotta remove that piece of plywood leaning against the house. That was the only thing in it. So I moved it inside of 30 seconds, it's all good. You know, better, let's face it, yeah. I followed through.
Okay, so the other thing the regional district looks after in relations to emergency is 911 communications. Again, across the regional district, except for the 3 larger municipalities. So this service seeing also 5% increased taxation driven by rising costs and declining external revenue. So what's basically happened is 911, if anybody's had a landline, there used to be a levy, or still is a levy on a landline that goes to fund 911 services. The number of landlines are decreasing drastically. So if you have a smartphone or a cell phone, you don't pay a 911 levy. Landlines you do, and number of landlines are going down. So if I remember roughly, the number of landlines is down at least 50% or more from where it was 20 years ago. So that's a huge reduction in revenue. So that's made up by taxation. So you got a reduction on taxation. The other thing that we have going on is your regional district doesn't run its own dispatch services. We contract those out. So when you phone 911, an operator in the central Okanagan picks that up in a call center. So we pay that call center on behalf of of the residents a fee to run that service or provide that service. And if it ends up it's a call for fire, and that gets transferred to Fraser Fort George for fire dispatch, and that's we have contracted out to do fire dispatch in Fraser Fort George. So the costs of running both those services increasing, and then as well to move to NG 911 requires a fair amount of support and costs. So even our internal GIS services support it, and we are as much as possible applying for grants to cover the costs of doing that. We've been fairly successful over the last several years to do that. And then part of 911 is also then making sure we have the right infrastructure in place for dispatch for a radio basis. So it's not every area has cell phone coverage. So we have to make sure radio repeaters and things are in place to reach a wider set of properties for 911 coverage. So we'll jump over to fire protection. There's 3 for area, this is Area G, Salmo has its own. So Area G has 3 fire protection services, one is in Weimar, so that's seeing a 10% increase. That's driven by increase in salaries and with training needs, asset management programs, so Weimar's got, setting aside money to basically, the big cost that's coming up is replacement of fire trucks or fire apparatus in the coming years. And then there's some floor repairs required at that hall. Area G residents who live closer to Salmo, but not in Salmo, get fire service provided by Salmo, so that service is basically seeing an inflationary increase. And then the residents who live closer to Area G residents who live closer to Fruitvale and close enough to get service there are seeing a bit of a larger increase to get fire services provided by the RDKB.
Yeah, talking about Weimar, we increased it by $100,000 last year, which is almost 25% of the budget. And so if it's only a 10% increase this year, it should be more really. But and the reason I say that is because the cost of fire is on $500,000 pre-COVID to now close to $1 million.
Wow.
So if I put setting aside the next $100,000 a year, 5 years, $1 million, so that means when the fire truck you'll be able to afford it. Because unless you would go to the referendum, only they're allowed to borrow money for 5 years, which is the same thing as we're saving for now. So that's the reason for that. It's really, it used to be that what you could do is with our first, no, that's not referendum.
The top one is.
The top one is ours, and you see the big red truck in the back when I go way the far side, the tender. Okay, that one only $300,000. But what we did is we were able to lease it from for the first 5 years. We saved up enough money to buy it at a reduced price at the end of 5 years. But we got it paid for within 10 years, and that was good. The province won't let us do that kind of thing anymore. Which is too bad. We've been at UBCM. We've been talking to them and arguing with them. That's where they are with that, which is really too bad. They said, no, you want to buy a fire truck if you haven't got the money. Well, and what happens if the referendum fails?
Yeah.
Then you have no fire. You don't, because you have to have
Fire department, you just gotta pay for it 5 years. You're not allowed to increase the service.
no, what point is, no, you'll have the same service you did, except you won't have a rated fire service, so all your insurance rates are gonna go up anyway. That's the reason, because the underwriters are the ones who are really driving this thing that they've sold for 15 years. That big tender of ours, has 13,000 kilometers on it, and it's 30 years old. And it has been checked over from one end to the other every year.
Yeah.
Really, really checked over. And, sorry, it's 30 years old. You can't get 30 years old.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for allowing me to.
Transit service that's 239, so it's seen a fair bit for a huge increase.
Let's not say fair, but it's a massive increase.
Big increase. A lot of what that's driven by is the provincial government during COVID threw a bunch of funding into transit and said we had a bunch of surpluses, reserves, so we basically, those were used up last year. And so without those there, it's a 41% increase this year because of those surpluses and reserves are gone. On the other hand, what's helping out the next few years is the health connection funding increases. The other big project that's going on from an administrative perspective with our transit services, the transit, so Creston and area have their own transit service, which is okay and fine on that side. On this side of the lake, we have 3 different services that are all crossing over each other because there's a long legacy of the reasons why. And it's really difficult to make adjustments to levels of services and to have then a fair impact on taxation. You might say, oh, cut that bus service back. Well, the users of that bus don't pay less, somebody else will end up paying less. So anyway, all of that's being fixed and worked on, so it's more transparent. So if we're gonna cut a service here, then the residents, hopefully in that area, would pay less. So anyway, a big administrative project, is being worked on to make sure that if we are adjusting services, then it's done on a fair and transparent basis. In the meantime, surpluses have gone down, but operating costs have also increased a fair bit, as has everything else, due to, the cost of a bus. Same as a fire truck has basically almost doubled in the last 7 years. We don't run the buses ourselves. BC Transit runs them, and they charge us a fee. But as their cost to procure equipment goes up, their fee to run the buses goes up.
With Salmo Area G, you have to be thankful, because for years, when we first got transit, we have never ever paid our share for our transit. So we get IHA funding, but we do not pay what it would cover. And so everybody else has been subsidizing and Area G. And as we increase, our transit has not increased greatly. So that's some of it, is the new way that Tom Dool has figured it out. The allocation is to make it more fair for everybody, and that's why it's hitting us so hard, because we've been so low for so many years.
If I may, but the nice thing about it is if you need to get to the trail hospital, you can take the bus. You take the bus from here to Nelson, you sit around for a few hours, then get that help bus to trail, Canada, and then the link to trail. Yeah, and then some of that takes another 2 days, you might as well get a hotel. That's what that help link does, that's the help link we're paying for. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit bitter, because I think that, as we all know, if they had a loop service, we could have had service every 2 hours, going, you can get you any place in the regional, in our section of the regional district, at half the cost of what it's doing. But that, because of the other areas don't like this idea, and BC Transit hasn't approved the idea, we're stuck with what we got. This thing that runs a couple of days a week, 4 days a week, and then gets you there, won't get you. So it's useless for going to school, it's useless for going to work. And other than going shopping, or maybe taking your garbage to Nelson, that's all it's good for.
Okay, we'll jump into the pie charts. So basically showing the breakout in a pie of where different areas of G and Salmo, where your taxes go. So as I mentioned previously, Area G has probably the most services in the regional district, which means that these pie charts are the most difficult to read, because some of those slices of pies are really, really, really small. So when I look at these, I generally look at the 2 or 3 or 4 largest ones. And so for somebody living in Weimar and has Weimar fire protection, almost 45% of your tax bill is going to the fire. And next after that, at about 10 or 15% is the regional waste service, and then some rec services, and then don't ask me to read all the other small ones. But anyway, that makes up between those 4 services almost 75% of your tax bill in Weimar, if you have fire service.
The fire service is the most expensive one.
Yeah.
And, well, yeah, you either have it or you don't, but the fact, even at taking that much of your thing, it saves you thousands upon thousands. And if you're outside the Weimar Fire Service, they have wildfire past fire coverage, you're paying between $7,000 and $8,000 a year on a 10-year.
So Area G, so if you're getting coverage from Kootenay Boundary, this is where what your tax bill or breakout looks like. Fire protection, about 30%, refuse disposal, and rec making up the next largest shares. Area G getting coverage from Salmo, fire protection, is now a small portion of your bill. It's contract service, refuse, about 20%, and then a bunch of rec services, make up a good portion. So it's hard to read here, but when I look at it now, I say, yeah, if you combine all the rec services, swimming pools, community halls, and all those things, those are probably 30 or 40%, and all your museums and sort of all those cultural and rec and park things. There's a whole bunch of small ones, but if you combine them all, you're probably at 30 to 40% of the tax bills related to those items. And then if you're Area G and have no fire protection from any of the 3 fire services, now refuse disposal is your largest one, but again, all the rec and parks community services are probably almost 40 or 50% of your tax. Okay. And then finally, for property owners in the village of Salmo, the RDCK portion of your tax bill is primarily, again, refuse disposal, which is just over 25%. And then all those rec parks and community services, libraries, swimming pools, etc., are over 50, probably 55%, and then a bunch of smaller services. And that's it. So any questions?
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for allowing me to know about, because
Yeah, no worries.
like, for example, Jerry saying that regards to fire market, things with regards to water, fire. I'm glad I could tell me about them and how they got to be where they are. And you have to watch percents, because percents, if you're only making $100, the 50% increase is $50.
Public comments. So that percentage goes on what our houses were.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just went up.
In order to get all that together,
Your assessment.
here, that's where you got your spring off from, is that it?
Big package?
Well,
Yeah, it's,
everything that you went through tonight,
yeah, this presentation is available on the website.
rdck.ca,
I'm sorry,
rdck.ca website.
Yeah.
You go to the meetings,
well, it was just, it's a lot to take in,
Mhm.
and it's going through your head.
Yeah.
But if you went home and got it on the computer and just looked at a little bit of it now and then,
Mhm.
or if it's one thing that specifically interests you, then hone in on that. But that's a lot of important information.
Mhm.
And it just makes a person like me who doesn't understand taxes think, oh my God.
Yeah, this stuff goes on.
The amount-
And then this is all on the website too. This is
that's
200,
every service.
this is 230. It doesn't all apply to here, but as we saw, there's 40, almost 40 services between Salmo and G. So if you really want to get into under the hood on any of these services, all the details.
My gosh.
That's what we call our Bible.
Holy, that's amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of work and effort, I'm sure, between staff and directors, committees and commissions, and the board to get to this. No, we're not done.
No.
We've got another 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So we
Yes.
approve
Yes.
RDCK taxes, and then municipalities approve theirs. So RDCK has to approve by March 31st.
Yeah.
And we have to approve by May 15th, municipalities. So it gives the municipality a chance to be able to look at, okay, so, and that's why you see that municipalities are like, oh geez, we need to figure out what it's gonna be with resource recovery, because our garbage, And so a municipality has two tax bills that they're paying, right? So you'll see that like it's $168 for 100,000 here. But it could be another $168 per 100,000 at the municipality. Right?
Okay, I'm gonna ask if there's any questions online before we leave the Zoom meeting. Okay, well, thank you everyone online for joining us. I'm going to exit the Zoom meeting now.